What is the life of a spy really like? Is it like you see in the movies and read in the books?
There are different types of spies and different narratives and different things. But if you are looking at movies, then I think Lakara is the nearest to reality. You know, Ajit Doval is a fantastic spook.
I think you called him. I think you said he has a gambler's instinct.
Yeah, he has everything. I'm not the perfect spook. I know that.
You think Mr. Doval is?
I am much more. He's much more a spook than I am. And a lot of people thought I was crazy also, because not only the Hurriyat, but every separatist, every terrorist that I met, most of them came home.
You had terrorists coming home?
I had terrorists coming home. Somebody landed up at our place in Friends Colony and said, "Aapka interview karna hai." I said, "I roz interview karne hain, kuch nahi hai. Forget about it. I have nothing to say, nothing new, nothing more to say." He said, "Salahuddin bhi hai aaj interview mein."
Acha.
हाँ. So I said, "फिर मैं आता हूँ."
When people hear the word spy, they have a certain impression in their mind from watching Bond movies mostly, or some version of their favorite espionage thriller, Jean Le Carre, Bourne Identity. What is the life of a spy really like? Is it like you see in the movies and read in the books?
There are different types of spies and different narratives and different things. But if you are looking at movies, then I think Lakara is the nearest to reality, you know, because this Disham really doesn't happen in real life. They're good to watch. And Lakara also goes very close to the tradecraft of the business, because he's been in the business. Yeah, you know, he served, and he's one of those guys who served in both the agencies.
Yeah.
In MI5 and also in MI6. So he knows the business and he's put it across extremely well. So that's pretty close to reality. But it also varies, I would say, having been around the world a little bit.
From country to country?
It varies from country to country. You know, I think, I would say the Brits are very good at it, because they're very tight about it. You know. We in India, for instance, we go more with personalities, you know, like everybody, question will arise, Ajit Doval. Ajit Doval is a fantastic spook.
I think you called him, I think you said he has a gambler's instinct.
Yeah, he has everything, you know, he's perfect in many ways.
Explain perfect?
And no, I'm just saying, when I talk about myself, I feel that for the business, I'm far too open. You know,
you mean a certain amount of opacity is necessary?
I believed in openness, and it is paid, as far as I'm concerned. It's paid me. But I'm not the perfect spook, I know that.
You think Mr. Doval is?
I am much more. He's much more a spook than I am. You know.
What is the essential quality to be a good spook?
You know, he has every quality.
Name three.
Extremely hardworking, doesn't compromise, and he's willing to take his risks, like you said, a gambler's instinct. You know. And we worked together on Kashmir. When he went to Kashmir, I was at headquarters. And I said, Ajit, I know you're going to do it your way. And I know you'll get results better than me. That's exactly what he did. He did it his way. So,
what is the difference between the Doval doctrine and the Dulat doctrine?
I have no doctrine.
Okay, what is the difference between Ajit Doval's way of being a spy and AS Dulat's way of being a spy?
I'm telling you, I'm far too open to be a spy. I'll give you an example, you know, it's very interesting. When you remember the time in the early 2000s when I started, when I was talking to the Hurriyat, and then I brought the Hurriyat here.
I remember covering the talks at the Nehru Guest House in Srinagar.
Exactly. So when we were talking to the Hurriyat,
you're talking both to the Hurriyat and the section of the Hizbul Mujahideen.
Yeah, that was more undercover, as you would say. But talking to the Hurriyat was fairly open. Everybody knew we were talking to the Hurriyat. It just took the government a while to decide, after 2002. I've been talking to them much earlier. But the thing is that, so there was a stage when Ajit was a little out of it all because he was not the DIB. He was, I think, second to the DIB. And as a friend, he said, you meet these Hurriyat leaders, do you mind including me sometimes? I said, sure. Next time they come to Delhi, I'll call you. So I just thought it proper to inform the DIB that, Ajit wants to meet the Hurriyat. And so next time, he said, but you meet them far too openly, you meet them at home. My officer can't meet them at home. It'll have to be in a safe house. So I told Ajit this. I said, we'll turn our home into a safe house. Come here, you're welcome as a friend. And he came. So that's the difference, That's the sort of thing.
What has been your most...
Like for instance, let me put it one step more. And a lot of people thought I was crazy also. Because not only the Hurriyat, but every separatist, every terrorist that I met, most of them came home.
You had terrorists coming home?
I had terrorists coming home. Yeah.
Can you name one?
Firdaus, he became a very dear friend. And the first time he came to Delhi, he wore a turban and came as a Sikh. So...
Now people are going to hear this and say, how does India's former raw chief talk about becoming friends with a terrorist?
Well, unless you befriend somebody, how are you going to move forward? Whether you do it undercover, whether you do it under the...
But you're pretending to be a friend, right? That's what the movies tell you. You're pretending to be a friend. You're not actually a friend.
Yeah, there's a very, very thin grey line there, when you start by pretending to be a friend. That's right, you're right. That's how it all starts. But quite often, after all, we are human beings. You actually end up being friends, And there was a time that Firdaus became so close that I treated him like a sort of younger brother, And
how did you reconcile?
He was very cut up when I wrote that book, the Kashmir book on Vajpayee.
Yes.
Because I named him, and so I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't have named him, but I named everybody.
No, my question to you is, your professional purpose is to safeguard the interests of your country.
Absolutely. There was no, in my mind, never any compromise there. No.
How do you reconcile that with calling a man who has armed himself to go against our country, a friend, a younger brother? You have to explain the dichotomy of what you have just said.
I'll tell you what it led to, what it produced. If you remember 1994, these four people, and let me also tell you that before they came overground, I was not, Firdaus was possibly not coming home. It was only after he came overground that he started coming home as a friend. There were these four terrorists, militant commanders of different tanzeems, who we brought overground, and we brought them overground by talking. A lot of people say, what do you get out of talking? That's what we got out of talking. This is, I think, February 94 or so. And Firdaus was actually Shabir Shah's militant commander. And in course of time, he got disillusioned with Shabir because he thought Shabir was dragging his feet. He felt that his coming overground would lend a lot of support to Shabir, which it did, but Shabir didn't know.
Right.
Yeah, and so he felt let down. And then he, if you recall, he joined the National Conference and he became an MLC. And Dr. Saab took him in. So a lot of things happen, these are positives.
Yeah, but the question is that it's a thin line you're walking as a spy, right?
Of course it is.
You have at some point dealt with.
And even a separatist, I take you back to 1990 when I came back from Kashmir. And this whole game started soon after that, 6-8 months after that. When I started dealing with Kashmir, and Kashmiris started coming to Delhi. And I was told by some senior officers, you need security at home. I said, there's no point. If I have security, it'll stick out. And if somebody wants to shoot me, he can shoot me anyways. Security or no security. I walk around town, I'm everywhere, I'm seen.
See, you've always been very open about, I think the exact line in one of your books was, corrupting someone with money is better than killing them. You've been open about the fact that you'll do what it takes. In some case, it may be a dialogue. In some case, it may be helping financially. You even went on record in one of your books to say that you helped Salahuddin's son. Syed Salahuddin, for those who don't know, is the head of the Hizbul Mujahideen, the main militant terrorist outfit in Kashmir. He is living in Pakistan under the protection of the Pakistani state. And then you talk about helping his son with a position in medical college. Explain that to our audience, why you would do that.
I personally didn't help him.
You said the state helped him.
The organization helped him.
Yes.
My colleague in Srinagar helped him. Went to the chief minister and Dr. Saab obliged. So
why?
Because it was in the interest of national security. Dr. Saab understood it. My colleague in Srinagar understood it, and we did it. I mean, there is a story which went around that I had met Salahuddin.
Have you?
No, I haven't.
Have you spoken to him?
I'll tell you how I spoke to him. One day, I think it was Star TV or somebody landed up at our place in Friends Colony and said, "Aapka interview karna hai." I said, "Yaar, roz interview karne hain, kuch nahi hai. Forget about it. I have nothing to say, nothing new, nothing more to say." He said, "Salahuddin bhi hai aaj interview mein."
Acha.
So I said, "Phir main aata hu." So there were three of us. There was a young journalist from Srinagar, I forget his name, and there was Salahuddin, and there was me. So that's the time we talked to each other.
You've never spoken directly off camera to him?
No. And I said to him in that interview, during that interview, I said to him, we are talking about talking, and inka bhi role hai, So he said, hamare liye to table pe jagah hi nahi hai. I said, Salahuddin Saab knows कि table पे जगह कैसे बनाई जाती है.
But you, this I know, so I can say, you attempted to split the Hizbul Mujahideen and get at least a faction of them to come overground. What ended up happening was, please correct me if I'm wrong, but as much as I tracked it, each one of those who attempted a dialogue with you was killed. What happens in an operation like that for a spy? You take a chance, you're offering a prospect of a better life, a different life to somebody you're trying to persuade, put your guns down, come into the mainstream, and then you fail to protect them, right? Now, one view would be you don't owe them that protection. They lived by the gun, they died by the gun, fair and square. As a spook, when you saw that operation fail, I don't know if you'd call it a failure, what did you feel?
Wretched. I felt very bad. Because, he was a good man.
Who was a good man?
The man who got killed, the man he was talking about, the man who came across.
The Dar faction of the Hizbul Mujahideen.
Yeah. And he was a good man. And I was looking ahead, frankly. I thought in course of time, he would be part of the Hurriyat. And these guys in the Hurriyat who were dragging their feet, he would get them to move because he'd seen life that side across. And he knew there was nothing there. And whatever had to happen in the valley and had to be settled in the valley. And so now coming to the point of security, it's an interesting point you make. I did feel wretched, and this is one of the things on which I know Ajit quietly criticized us, that you guys didn't look after this fellow. So
Abdul I was trying to remember his name.
Yeah,
Abdul
I would accept that criticism, but I was not in Srinagar. The point really is that can you force a guy to have security? This fellow didn't want security. We did have some security for him, but he didn't want security. And then he was a ladies' man, so he got entangled in all kinds of things. So anyway, incidentally, he was very keen to go back to Pakistan just before he got killed. So I think one of the motivations is that possibly they didn't want him back in Pakistan, and that's why.
Let's before we come to more nuggets from the playbook of a spy, I want to talk about Kashmir. And I want to talk about Kashmir because I know it's been the magnificent obsession of your professional life, even your personal life. Do you think you got Kashmir wrong? And I ask this with some consideration that 370 gets abrogated. A lot of Kashmir watchers, you, me, I don't claim to have your expertise, but people who have been obsessed with Kashmir for a long time say, oh my God, this is going to lead to massive turmoil. Kashmir is going to backslide. All attempts at peace are going to now collapse. It turns out, it could be argued, that the Modi government's instinct was right. Kashmir seems to be thriving. Street protests are not present. You yourself, a few days ago in an interview said, separatism is pretty much over in Kashmir. Not terrorism, but separatism.
What I said was that separatists are almost over, but separatism may take longer. It's still in the mind there.
Okay.
Because radicalism is increasing, and the two.
By which you mean that young people are getting Islamized more than before?
That's right. You see, now we put a ban on the Jamaat for 5 years. So their leaders, the infrastructure, all that is under control. Most of their leaders are under arrest and things. But the sympathizers are growing. And that's not a good sign, It's not a good sign for times ahead. Because Kashmir has always been, the greatness of Kashmir, as you know, has been its Kashmiriyat, togetherness, everybody together. And incidentally, the Jamaat is very, very keen on elections now. Because they would like to see an elected government. Who they will vote for, anybody's guess.
But do you believe that the 370 abrogation, which was much feared, much debated, turned out to be a non-issue?
It was always a non-issue. And it was never really debated, There was nothing to debate over 370. Because there was no 370. In reality, there was a provision in the Constitution. And you removed it. Okay. So, point is, 370 had gone in 1975 when Sheikh Saab entered into the accord with Mrs. Gandhi, Indira Gandhi. And there was nothing left because when he said that accession was irrevocable, that was the end of the matter. And Dr. Saab keeps saying all over the place that he was born an Indian, he will die an Indian, and how many times do you want him to say it? And so the thing is that, when it happened, the thing in my mind or my argument was, why would you want to remove something which really doesn't exist? It's only in the mind, because it was only a fig leaf for the Kashmiri. Now you removed it. So I was critical at that point of time, but I realized over a period of time that what is gone is gone. It's not going to come back. The matter is sub judice, but I don't expect it to come back.
But do you acknowledge that things in Kashmir today, for example, there was a time when after Friday prayers, you went into downtown Srinagar, there was always some sort of street protest. You went in as somebody who was seen as a nationalist Indian, there would be stones thrown at you or stones thrown at your car. Pelting stones was a great instrument of expressing anger on the street. There hasn't been that kind of street protest now for a long time.
I'll tell you that. I was myself surprised because I thought there would be protests and somewhere or the other the youth would give vent to their expression. And but again, just to reiterate 370, in the course of time I realized that it was done, dusted, and the Kashmiri is also beginning to reconcile to it. He won't say it, he might admit it to me and you, but he won't say it if there's a foreigner there, openly there. And so that is that. Now, I went to Kashmir, the first time I went to Kashmir after the abrogation. I don't remember exactly when. Must have been in 20. And I met some youngsters and I said, what's happening? So it reminded me of something like, 1857, the time of what we call the War of Independence or the Mutiny, whatever way you look at it. And that everything had gone quiet. And the message, the thing I got out of there was that the Kashmiri has decided not to die cheap. And they said that now they don't even they don't express anything. It's, if there is a message, it's passed by word of mouth in downtown Srinagar. And even today, the most frightening thing in Kashmir, of course, tourism is booming, there's no doubt about it. And everything looks hunky-dory now. It's the silence on the street, when you meet Kashmiris, they say nothing.
What does that mean, nothing?
That's what is dangerous, I feel is dangerous. That nothingness is dangerous. And you hear Mehbooba say things, you hear Umar say things, you hear Sajjad say things, which are not exactly complimentary.
How do you reconcile those things with the fact that, as you said, tourism is booming, you have restaurants open, the city looks,
Fantastic.
new and fantastic?
The city, let me explain the city to you. This is the G20 city.
Correct.
Along the Dow.
Which in itself is a pretty strong statement to make geopolitically.
I'm telling you, it is the city from Dal Gate to Nishad Gardens. I was surprised. I saw double-decker buses flying up and down. And that boulevard is, always there's a traffic jam there. It's so distinct. But it's there. That's not the city. You go to downtown. I went to Nagin.
Yes.
I hadn't been for a few years. I said, let's go and look at Nagin. So you go through Ranawari. It's the old ramshackle city. Nothing different there. There's no tourism there. Tourism is here.
Yeah.
And like you said, new restaurant, new eateries have opened.
Yes.
There's a fantastic confectionery shop there, Ladadris.
Yes.
Huh?
Yes.
Fantastic bakery. We went there 2-3 times. It was so good. I don't think Delhi has a better bakery.
So do you concede, therefore, that some things have changed for the better?
Yeah, they have, of course.
What are they? List them. Apart from tourism, what has brought about this change? I think the more important point is what has brought about this change.
What has brought about the change is that an understanding that 370 is gone.
Yes.
That whole idea of being different or separate or whatever it is, as I said, separatism hasn't totally gone. But that idea that we are different or we are that, there is a gradual compromise there, and I think that is where we are missing a trick, because the mainstream, what we call the mainstream, is growing, and we are not taking advantage of it. Let me give you an example. Mirwaiz is an example of it. You mentioned, stone pelting after Friday prayers. Friday prayers have virtually stopped because the Mirwaiz is not allowed out. He's the Pope there, and he is under sort of house arrest. So the point is, and I think we are missing out on the Mirwaiz, because I think Pakistan is over now, at least for the time being. If Pakistan comes back, it will be our fault, because Pakistan is gone. It's not in the mind. It's just, always has been a fallback position for Kashmir and Kashmiri. But to get it totally out of the mind is that, and that's what we've been trying to do since 1947, mainstream Kashmir. And Kashmir has been mainstream. Now the BJP can take all the credit for abrogating 370 and say, this is the final mainstreaming. Yeah, okay, maybe as an argument, it's all right. But it's been happening over a period of time. When Sheikh Saab entered into that accord, I think that was a watershed moment. That was really the mainstreaming of Kashmir. And that's what I'm trying to say, that if you get the Mirwaiz in, apart from the National Conference and the PDP and Sajjad and Altaf and whatever it is, it will be a big thing.
So the Modi government, I think, would argue that there used to be an old way of handling Kashmir.
Absolutely.
And now there's a new way of handling Kashmir.
Sure.
You'd agree with that?
I agree.
So they
I don't argue with that. And probably, maybe this is a better view. Time will tell.
Okay.
A better way
Better way. Now they would look at a Yasin Malik, for example. Someone who used to espouse violence, continued to be a separatist even when he gave up violence, who is now being brought to justice. The government would argue that this is a case, this is somebody who's, accused of killing Air Force officers, and he was never brought to justice. He was treated with kid gloves, and now it is we who are determined to bring him to justice. A lot of people who don't know that Kashmir are looking at this today would look at you and say, Dulad Saab, please explain. Why was this man treated with kid gloves? What would you say? Why was a Yasin Malik not brought to justice earlier? Why is that happening now, so many years later? How would you explain that?
I'm glad you mentioned Yasin. He's not one of my favorites because he's a bit kinky. And but I think we missed a big opportunity. When I look back, sometimes things strike you much later.
Yeah.
I think we missed a big opportunity of not dealing with JKLF. Because if you go back to 89, 90, that's all there was to deal with. But because we missed that opportunity of not talking to these boys sufficiently.
You had foreign terrorists coming.
Yeah, then what happened? You see, even Pakistan didn't expect this thing to grow so much, so rapidly. And that's how they created the Hizbul Mujahideen. That's how, Geelani was he called these people terrorists, the JKLF. And so Geelani Sahib was brought into it. And Geelani was resisting it because the Jamaat was out of it. Geelani Sahib was brought in, and then the Hizbul Mujahideen was created. And then everybody who went and applied for membership got a new tanzeem. That's what happened. So I think the JKLF was a great opportunity. But it's an opportunity that Pakistan missed first. Because there was
Amanullah Khan.
Amanullah.
But this is not answering my question. That you are looking at this as a Kashmir, you're looking at the chessboard and you're saying on the chessboard. The person, the ordinary Indian watching this conversation is going to say, please explain why a man who was a secessionist, who has now been convicted, was not brought to justice all these years. Why did the Indian state look away from what Yasin Malik had done?
I don't have an answer to that.
Do you think it was correct to look away?
As an intelligence officer, I'm telling you, we missed an opportunity with the JKLF. And if you recall, when Yasin came back to Srinagar out of detention, I think it was May 94 or so, and he came and said, I'm giving up the gun. I become Gandhian. Do you remember that? And then he sat on dharna outside his house in Mysuma, and some boys in a three-wheeler came and picked him up and bashed him up and said, what nonsense are you talking? What is Gandhian here? But he never picked up the gun after that. To his credit, that's that. And I hope you know that his wife has become a minister.
Of course, I was going to say that this, some things are so bizarre that they would almost be comic if they weren't tragic because they're so surreal. Now, my question to you is, you spoke about the radicalism of the young, perhaps, or the growing radicalism of the young. Perhaps that was best encapsulated in what happened with a Burhan Wani, who used social media, weaponized social media to spread this separatist narrative. And you had a spate of these kind of young men who were now turning secessionist. You today say separatism isn't over, but separatists are. Explain that.
Where are the separatists really?
Are they defunct?
Almost.
Is the Hurriyat conference defunct today?
Almost, yeah, it's finished. Look at the Hurriyat. Other than the Mirwaiz, what is left of the Hurriyat? Abbas is gone, Professor is old, decrepit, Bilal is hardly interested in separatism. The moment you call him this side, he'll step this side. And there's a Mirwaiz. Geelani Sahib has gone, and Yasin used to be in the Hurriyat, Shabir used to be in the Hurriyat, they are in jail. So what is there left? There's nothing.
So the question might be
Yeah,
asked.
you're coming to Burhan Wani.
Yeah.
Burhan is a very interesting story. And incidentally, he never used a gun. He was a poster boy for militants.
But he had guns.
Yeah, he liked to be photographed with guns. But he was a poster boy. And today, the Kashmiris say, there is no poster boy. So those who still believe in militancy are lost. There is no leader.
But from an Indian point of view, that's a good thing.
Of course it's a good thing. It's a fantastic thing.
Yeah.
And we hope they don't find us.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no doubt about it. The interesting thing about Burhan is, I guess you know, that his family was a Jamaat family from Tral. His father was a teacher or a headmaster or something. And this guy got bashed up one day by the army. Somebody, a major or someone, slapped him and this, that. And he went and complained to his father. And his father said that this is Kashmir. So if you got slapped, you got slapped. What's the big deal? That is what got him into this thing. And he took to militancy. And the latest narrative, which is most intriguing, most interesting that I heard on my trip to Srinagar this time, is that it was Pakistan which had him killed.
What do you mean?
That the Pakis passed on information to a certain quarter that this boy can be had at such and such place at such and such time. Something like that. And that's how he was caught or bumped off. Now, why did Pakistan do that? Pakistan did it because Burhan Wani was becoming too big a name. And everyone who has become big in Kashmir has gotten into trouble, whether it's Lone Saab, whether it's Mirwaiz Farooq, whether it was Dr. What was his name, Guru, or whether it was the Mirwaiz of South Kashmir. Anyone who they think has become bigger than they want him to be, he gets bumped off.
Let's talk about these wheels within wheels that exist in the life.
You don't believe what I said?
I don't know, so I can't argue. I can't say yes or no or maybe. I'm just
Everybody knows.
No, I would. Okay, let me argue back. I think everyone who attempts to give up a life of the gun and come to the dialogue table has been targeted. I would argue with you that Abdul Ghani Lone was not targeted because he grew big. He was targeted because he was considered a dove among the separatists. He wanted a dialogue, for example.
No, you see,
Syed Ali Shah Geelani was not targeted by the Pakistanis because he did their bidding.
That's right. But Lone Saab's story goes back a little bit. If you remember when Musharraf came here, and there was that infamous tea party at his place. I don't know whether it was in the embassy or the High Commissioner's residence, but which the Hurriyat attended. And Lone Saab said there to Musharraf that now Kashmiris are very tired. We've had enough of all this, and we cannot carry on. And Geelani protested very strongly that no, we're not tired. We will carry on.
Oh, exactly. That's.
So that is what got him. Possibly that was the beginning of his end, of Lone Saab. And Lone Saab had a premonition. He had a premonition.
Well, his
other mistake was that he had gone and met the ISI in Dubai just a few months before he was killed. And there he told them a few home truths. He had done that. He used to speak out when he had to. There's a story about Lone Saab that the first time he went to Pakistan, he had to deal with some army major or something. And he said that I'm a politician. I won't talk to the military. And he was told that here you'll have to talk to the military, which is a big shock for Lone Saab.
Now let's because we could talk about Kashmir for hours.
Oh,
Let's zoom out, as they say. This sort of wheels within wheels, not the grey lines that separate an adversary from a asset. What has been your most difficult assignment as a spook?
No, every assignment is...
most challenging, an assignment that will stay with you, something you regret, something you think could have been done differently outside of Kashmir. We've seen many examples from Kashmir. Is there anything else? Is there anything you look back and say, I wish I had done that differently, or that was really dangerous, I could have got killed?
There are always people who get killed. And let me say that quite often they get killed because they've done something for us. That's a part of this whole game. That there are.
And they die, and they get killed unsung.
They get killed unsung. That's right. That's right. I mean, there are stories I could tell you, but I can't tell you. So the point really, that's a part of it. And you started by saying, what's a spook's life like?
No, I asked you this because we've all only know spook's life from the movies or the books.
At times, it's a very lonely life, because like you started, you asked me about Majid and what I felt wretched. Although I was not handling him, I was not in Kashmir.
Yeah.
I was only overseeing or getting to know what was happening. And but I still felt wretched. And as I said, Ajit in his own way was critical. Possibly he was right, I don't know.
So the whole life of espionage is rooted in the assumption that nothing is as it seems, or nothing is only as it seems, that there is that there are multiple truths beneath the surface. So can you give an example? I think you've mentioned, for example, the 2003 ceasefire, the one confidence building measure between India and Pakistan that is still more or less held. More or less. There have been eruptions, more or less it's remained stable. Now there's a backstory there. There's a backstory there about spade work that is done at the level of covert agencies.
Yeah, of course there is.
How does that work? What I'm trying to understand is the psychology of...
Well, I can give you one little instance, because it's not so secret. When Majid came over, the Hizbul Mujahideen declared a ceasefire.
Yes.
I think that
it was an 8-day or 10-day ceasefire.
Yeah, it didn't last. That obviously was part of the deal.
Yeah.
So, and then Salahuddin went back on that ceasefire. So, I remember it was the month of Ramzan was coming up. And Ghani came and met me. And he said, वो ceasefire तो खत्म हो गया. अब आप दोबारा ceasefire क्यों नहीं करा देते? I said, you don't, ceasefire is not one-sided. He says, one-sided भी हो सकता है. Ramzan आ रहा है, अच्छा मौका है. So we used that. And the great man, Vajpayee, he declared a ceasefire on his own. That Ramzan ceasefire, which many people don't know about. Yeah. I mean, he was an incredible human being,
Were you wrong though about, I asked you if you were wrong about Kashmir. Do you now think that this advocacy of engagement with Pakistan that you have believed in?
I still believe in it.
But at the same time, you feel Pakistan is gone as far as Kashmir is concerned. Look at what's happening in Pakistan today. The president today, Let me tell
you a couple of things.
Yeah.
All right.
Pakistan is in the kind of churn where the president says that he's actually, documents have been forged on his behalf. Yeah. So what would India gain, it might be asked, by engaging with Pakistan?
You see, I had been saying this publicly for the last 3-4 months. Now I've stopped because everything has changed.
Yes.
Totally in Pakistan. I was saying, this is my intuition, I had no information, nothing. Sometimes we idiots talk out of intuition. I said Modi ji will engage with Pakistan before the end of the year. It was my gut feeling. Something said. By the way, talking never stops. Talking never stops. Anybody who says we are not talking is lying. Because talking between countries never stops. We talk to the Chinese, we talk to the Pakistanis, we talk everywhere.
It's just which channel you're talking through.
Yeah, but that engagement continues. The important engagement is, leader to leader, summit or whatever it is, or foreign secretaries meeting or whatever. I've always believed that the bureaucracy is not up to all this. It has to be a summit meeting if to be meaningful. So now it doesn't look possible because there's no government in Pakistan. Who do you talk to? And incidentally, as you know, Mina Sahib has always been a preferred option.
Why is Nawaz Sharif India's preferred? Let me zone in on
We
that.
had a good equation with him. And it goes back to Vajpayee again. That bus ride. And you know what happened at that time. It was an exceptional moment in India-Pakistan relationship, that bus ride in February 99.
Followed by Kargil.
Followed by Kargil. Followed by attack on Parliament.
Correct.
Followed by so many things. But Vajpayee didn't give up. In a public meeting in Srinagar.
Insaniyat ke daire mein. He said whatever's possible.
No, not that. That's a separate thing. That was said to the press at the airport. I'm talking of the public meeting that he addressed. I think it was the 17th of April, 2003. And he said, there was a large gathering. And he said, okay, I have reached out to Pakistan twice. And I have been betrayed twice. But I'm not going to give up. I'm going to reach out one more time. And the Kashmiri went delirious with joy. You know how the Kashmiri thinks. In the Kashmiri mind, it is like this. That if India and Pakistan are all right, then we are all right. We will not be bothered. Because the whole problem is between India and Pakistan. Now, this is something which has been said since Sheikh Saab's time or Lord Mountbatten's time, that unless this is settled, Kashmir will never be settled.
One of the turning points for India and Pakistan, there have been many, was the hijacking of IC-814 and the release of 3 terrorists, including Masood Azhar, who's today the Jaish-e-Mohammed head, again protected by the Pakistani deep state. Farooq Abdullah, your great friend, resisted. He's your great friend. Resisted this.
I'd be very
open about the fact.
I feel very big if he's my friend.
Okay. My question was different. Dr. Abdullah, then the chief minister, did not want these men to be released. Right? Do you think that was a big mistake? Do you think the releasing of the 3 terrorists in exchange for the safety of the passengers on IC-814 was a huge mistake?
No. I have said this. I've written about it. The mistake was in Amritsar.
To not immobilize the plane.
Not immobilized. That plane should never have been allowed to take off from Amritsar.
So why was it allowed?
Because nobody stopped it.
Who should have stopped it?
I don't know. There was everybody there. Nobody stopped it. Now, the point is, Delhi put the blame on the government of Punjab. And the government of Punjab at that point of time meant the DG Punjab. And the DG, who happened to be a batchmate, I had a long chat with him on this. He said, I spoke to my chief minister, and Badal Sahab was clear. He didn't want bloodshed in Amritsar. So he said, Delhi se pooch lo. And according to Sarabjit, Delhi didn't say anything. Nothing definite. So that's, you could say, I don't know where the blame lies. I mean, I was a part of that.
I know, that's why I'm asking you.
I was at the center of all that.
I'm asking you.
I can't say to you that A, B, C, D. But
do you think that
it was a goof up?
Okay, it was a goof up.
Yeah.
Do you think in principle to say that we're going to do a swap? We're going to give you 3 terrorists, you give us our people back.
There's nothing wrong with a swap, madam. We will always be swapping. The whole world swaps. The Israelis swap. What does Hamas always have up its sleeve?
Yeah.
An Israeli or 2. Ek do bater haath mein rakho. Then the Israelis will come around to some kind of this thing. That's how it works. That's how the world functions. I mean, that raid at Entebbe, that's very, very exceptional. And all these things were considered, incidentally, at the time what was it, December 99?
How common is it for an agent to be a double agent? And I ask you this in the context of one of the big, most wanted men from an Indian perspective is David Headley. David Headley, half Pakistani, becomes the man, the kingpin, as it were, of the 26/11 attacks. We know that he worked for American Drug Enforcement as an agent in Pakistan. We then know that he becomes the face of 26/11. We now know he's with the Americans. The Indians fought hard for direct access. We probably think that Headley will never be extradited, and we think that there's some American covert agency connection there. How do you read that?
Yeah, certainly he was a double agent. I don't know, he might have been a triple agent or whatever. But the fact of the matter is, I mean, I don't know David Headley. I never met him. But I had said immediately, I said, this guy, he's exceptional. He's a double agent. Incidentally, in our business, you know, it's a way how you look at it. And the great man, I used to look up to him. I think he was one of the better spooks. Gary Saxena used to say to me, Gary Saab said that double agents are the best agents. And he's right.
Why?
I'll tell you why. Because an agent is somebody who comes and tells you something. A double agent is somebody who comes and tells you what's happening that side, from the inside.
But then you don't know who he's loyal to.
No. Loyalty be damned. I'm talking of first, let's get this clear.
The information.
The information. What he can give you, nobody else can give you. Now it's up to you to analyze that. And also to analyze how much damage he could be doing to you. If he comes and has a glass of whiskey with you and goes back and says, "Ke Dulad sahab ko whiskey ka bada shauk hai," no harm done. But if I'm going to give him trade secrets, then I have to be careful. But the point is, if he can get me minutes of an ISI meeting, that's huge. That's huge.
And you don't care then if he's playing both sides. But then how do you know his information is authentic? If he's playing both sides.
Well, that again, you've got to analyze it. Churn it and see. You know, I've always said, I mean, in this game that you talk about, that why is it that we've never been able to win a war? Or at least one doesn't know whether one has. Somebody big enough in the Pakistan High Commission here?
I mean, if we had, we wouldn't know, right?
No, we wouldn't know. But
so how do we know?
Since I've been in the business, one has never heard about it.
So what does that tell us?
I should not also hear about it.
Yes, but what does that tell us?
It tells us a certain weakness.
Which is?
That we are not able to infiltrate here.
But it's a kind of zero-sum game, right? Because if we have infiltrated, we won't know that we have infiltrated or we shouldn't.
Yes. It reminds me of what Kuldeep Nayyar used to say. He said all this intelligence is bunkum. He says what you get and what they get actually cancels out. So what is the big deal? But
you don't actually believe that. Your life has been as one in the shadows, as they say. Yeah. Let me end therefore by asking you, do you look back at your life as a spook and regret something or have something that particularly stays with you? Something, you know, that keeps you awake at night. Everybody has their trauma that they carry into operations that have gone wrong, didn't go as planned.
Yeah, there are things. Of course, there are things.
Is there any one that you can share?
Let me also say that it's now almost 23 years since I was out of spookdom. So gradually they go out of the mind, hopefully. But yeah.
What's the toughest thing about being a spy?
Loneliness. Like when you say a spy, being in the intelligence service is a spy. And, you know, that winter of 89-90 that I spent in Srinagar was terrible. I was all alone. There's nobody there. And every time that I went out of the house, I didn't know whether I was going to come back or not. We lost 4 officers in the space of 3 weeks. Yeah. And that's the time the pundits were being targeted.
Yeah.
The Kashmir police was being targeted, the Kashmir special branch was being targeted. So everybody was being targeted, and there was nobody there. Absolutely nobody there. You know, all the central government offices just fled away, left.
Yeah.
And in those days, there was no army. There was an IG CRPF. There was hardly any BSF. And you were left to your own devices there, you know, when this whole thing happened. And it was a terrible, terrible time. Now you go to Srinagar, I mean, you know, this thing.
Well, life turns full
You know,
circle.
I'll tell you something.
Yeah.
I was moved out of Srinagar in March 1990. And I was very relieved. I said, I got out of this hell. Finished. I hope I never have to deal with Kashmir again. Little did I know
That would become your life
Kashmir
project.
will become my life. But I remember going back in May, same year, to get my baggage. I left without my baggage. Just packed a suitcase and left in March. When I went back to get my baggage a couple of months later, it was a flight in which it was so tense there. And I was sitting next to a BSF officer. I could make out because he was in Vardi. And I was dressed like this. And after a while, he said to me, are you going on a holiday? I said, no. I didn't want to start this conversation. Then he said, are you going on work? I said, no. So he didn't know what to say. He kept quiet. When we reached Srinagar, he got off the plane first. And he started walking off. And then he saw these IB guys and he saw me coming down. And he looked back and smiled.
Yeah.
So it was a scary time.
Yes, of
It was
course.
a scary time.
Well, may you continue regaling us with as many tales as you can share. I know many will go with you to your grave
Of course they do.
in your
A
writings.
lot of them. Like a lot of other things in life.
Yes.
Yeah.
Some
There's
things
so many things that
you can never tell.
you can never tell.
And that comes with the turf, as they say.
Absolutely.
But we're grateful for the tales that you can tell because we learn from them. Thank you, Dulad Saab. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Barkha. It's always a pleasure. Thank you very much.